أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Juzz number 12. Juzz number 12 has one of the famous surahs in the entire Quran, Surah Yusuf, which talks about a famous prophet of Allah Almighty, Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. Now, Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam was known for many things, amongst which one of them was that the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed him with an immense amount of beauty. But not only did he bless him with an immense amount of beauty, but Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam himself had a huge degree of control over one's desire, control over one's nafs, in respect of the rulings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He himself was a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was perfect in character, and from his lifestyle we can take a lot of lessons. And today's ayah that I've chosen is none other than the explanation of an incident that took place between Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam when he was in the house of a master, a female master, who saw his vast beauty, and she tried to put herself on Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. But at a time of doing so, when she tried to slowly reel him in, the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam showed a huge, great deal of restraint, and he actually said that he fears Allah, and he stayed away. And this is the lesson that I'd like to focus on today. The actual ayah that talks about this particular incident is in Surah Yusuf, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرَاوَدَتْهُ الَّتِي هُوَ فِي بَيْتِهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابَ وَقَالَتْ هَيْتَ لَكَ قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. This is talking about the time where a female was trying to advance towards Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam came to their house, brought in by the husband of the female, and he was put in this house, and the lady was the master of the house. And she saw that he had a great deal of beauty, and the temptation and the desire to place herself upon Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam took over, whereby she actually tried to do so. So what happened was, she tried to slowly follow him around the house, lock all the doors, and create a sense of privacy whereby she could perform her ill intention upon Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. But Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and this is what Allah highlights in the Quran, he turns around and says, قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ, I fear Allah, I am aware of Allah, and it is His revelation or His instruction that I only embark upon, and this is the only thing that I follow. And I guess the story of restraint of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam is something that we can really aspire to be inspired by. So we aspire to follow this. Why? Because we live in a time where temptation is so high, whereby free mixing between the two genders in a haram format is so prevalent and so available, that what is the message for especially young people or people who are struggling in this particular department, the department where temptation of a haram relationship with the opposite gender. Now, firstly, we must understand that the only relationship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to have between two parties of the opposite sex are that which is in the context of the sanctity of marriage, for those who we can marry. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes halal what is normally haram, whilst if only in the state of marriage. Now, today's time, just the way Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam faced a test whereby there was a woman in his time trying to reel him in or trying to do an act of zina with him, we face a time right now whereby not only are we having a challenge of the whisper or the temptation, but we have a challenge that's ongoing constantly, that the Shaithaan or the negativity that we are surrounded by within our community is constantly picking away at us. Now, what can we do? This is a very difficult task. It is not easy. But the first thing we must remember, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises a great reward for the things that are not easy. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in a position whereby you are taken over by such temptation, then know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, whereby He talks about giving a person a test, a burden, or a difficulty that he or she can bear. So He doesn't give a test or difficulty that we cannot bear. So the moment we understand that we fall within the context of temptation, we must also understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instilled an ability within me that I can avoid such temptation. And the way to avoid such temptation is avoid the things that lead to such temptation. So if you are in a crowd where you feel like you may do something wrong, then avoid the crowd, so that you're not in a position where you're already in the crowd next to the act that's haram by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you are fighting with yourself to try and pull yourself out. Secondly, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Constantly engage yourself in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember that He is always watching you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stated, even in the Quran, that He has placed 2 angels upon each of our shoulders. So you and I have an angel on either shoulder that records everything we do. And the principle of accountability within Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that everything we do is something that we must account for. So never do something knowing that Allah may not physically be in front of me, but know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows and hears and sees everything. So if it's something that you wouldn't do in front of a person, most likely you wouldn't do it in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this is all easy to say. It's very difficult to actually do. But we must also recognize that the Shaithaan also made a promise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that for as long as the son of Adam has breath in his soul, or his soul is alive, he will do everything he swears by Allah that he will do everything to take the son of Adam, i.e. you and I, away from the path. So there will be times when we may fail, but never lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I understand that my beloved creation, he fails every so often. But what He loves the most is when we return back to Him with an effort to do better. So within the context of today, the difficulty of society, and where we live in a place where fornication is really high, we must remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a system in place that makes you and I, as a Muslim, as a person or a follower of Islam, better than the bad that's out there. So we must endeavor to follow the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter how difficult it is, and we must try our best to avoid the things that lead us to fornication, that lead us to temptation, that lead us to doing things that are prohibited in the context of Islam. And remember one thing, those of you who try their best, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows our struggle. That we may be struggling to achieve success within a certain thing that I'm trying to achieve. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you for your efforts, He will bless you for your reward. And even if sometimes you get it wrong, He will still bless you for your intention. So it is with this, I make dua that Allah keeps you and I away from the evil temptations in this dunya. May He keep us amongst the path that's pleasing towards Him, and may He use us for His benefit. Jazakumullah khairan for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.